Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of The Pagemaster, with me, The Pagemaster! Today we're going to be talking about Dark Star, John Carpenter's Dark Star, or Dan O'Bannon's Dark Star. Dark Star is John Carpenter's first directorial movie. It came out in 1974, came out before Halloween, everything else, this is his film school movie. Made in their final year of film school, Dan O'Bannon and John Carpenter, together with friends, made Dark Star, a sci-fi comedy, sort of a reverent take on 2001 and a lot of the science fiction movies that were coming out at the time. They worked on it together. After the year was up and school was over, they continued to work on it. Originally it was planned to be a 20-minute short, but they kept on expanding upon it and ended up with 50 minutes. Unfortunately, that kind of puts them in an awkward space between a short film and a feature-length film, which usually runs at a minimum of like 85 or 90 minutes. And they found a way to get somebody to invest more money in it if they were to add more, and they padded it out, filmed more scenes. If you've seen the movie, the scenes with the beach ball alien, certain scenes like that were added into the movie. Sadly, the movie took almost 3 years for them to make, and by the end of it, I think friendships were largely strained. Today's book in the episode is going to be this Screen Flights, Screen Fantasies, which is an Omni collection of, Omni being the science fiction magazine, if you're unaware, collection of essays from tons of different people. Like the list in here, if I just go down here, these essays are written by Harlan Ellison, and interview with Sigourney Weaver, and articles from Stanley Kramer and Paul Bartel and Harry Harrison and Nicholas Meyer, the director of Undiscovered Country and Wrath of Khan, and Isaac Asimov, and anyway, on and on and on. What we're going to be looking at is this chapter on, it was called Remaking Dark Star, and I thought, well, that's interesting. So we're going to be skipping to page 151. Now, the essay that is in here, written by Dan O'Bannon, actually wasn't supposed to be the essay that was in here. What happened was they asked him to make some kind of essay, story, write something about the future, the possible futures, and Dan O'Bannon didn't know what to write, but the editor from Omni that he was talking to asked about the credits for Dark Star and what the controversy was, and so Dan O'Bannon laid out this really long letter by way of explanation, and when he was finished, the editor just said, let me use this. This is what we should use for the article. And so that's what I'm going to be reading from. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it pretty much chronicles the entire making of Dark Star and all the trials and tribulations. It's only about 5 pages, but we're going to skip right to the end. So here we go. Dark Star was done. After 3.5 years of incredible work and heartache, it was finished. In February of 1974, during the big gas crisis, in the Metrocolor screening room, when they told us this was the last answer print they were doing till they saw some money. But Carpenter and I were finished the year before. It had ended appropriately as it had begun, in a restaurant. Late in the summer of '73, in the now defunct Copper Pan at Gower and Sunset, John told me it was time our careers went in separate directions. He told me he didn't want to work with me anymore. I asked him why. You're too hard to get along with, he told me. Too demanding. You take, but you don't give. You always talk about yourself, but you're never interested in me. What about all the films we were planning to do together, I asked him. I had predicated my future on doing films with John, being his right-hand man, until both of us made it big, and then he would produce a film for me to direct. Without him, I'd be back to scratch. Forget it, he said. I may make mistakes without you, but at least they'll be my mistakes. In that case, I asked him if he would at least give me a credit that read, a film by John Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon, or produced by John Carpenter and Dan O'Bannon, so that I'd be able to go on without him. No, he said, there's only room for one person to get anything out of this film, and it's going to be me. Thus began the great Dark Star credit debate, which lasts tiresomely until this day. So that's pretty much it for Dark Star. I will say, though, that on this DVD, on the front cover, it says a John Carpenter / Dan O'Bannon cult classic. And on the back, O'Bannon does have a number of credits, from original story and screenplay to acting, and film editor. So at least that's something. Bannon passed away a few years ago, but he had been involved in numerous other cult projects. He directed Return of the Living Dead, which is a zombie classic. Not to Be Outdone. I believe Life Force he worked on, and Alien. He helped write the screenplay for the original Alien, so Dannon O'Bannon is a name. Dannon O'Bannon? Dannon O'Bannon is a name worth remembering!